and welcome back to Mother Tongue, your eyes, ears, and finger on the pulse for all parents around the world. Let's get going, shall we?
We are so incredibly excited to welcome Rosh Hill to Mother Tongue. Rosh, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm living my best sunny English British life in the north of England at the moment, and the sun has just come out to play. So hopefully this remains the case for the foreseeable. Where are
Yeah,
you in the world at the moment? I feel like all these summer travels, everyone I'm speaking to is kind of here, there, and everywhere.
I'm actually in Dubai at the moment, but I fly to the UK tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm super
lovely.
excited because I'm going to celebrate my belated 40th in the Hamptons with some friends. I'm dropping by via London, so I'm super excited.
Oh my God, that sounds absolutely dreamy. You don't look anywhere near 40. How is that possible?
Yes, oh, well, I don't know, maybe brown jeans. I have no idea,
Oh,
but I always
it
get
must
ID'd, which is kind of a good thing.
stop it. Oh my God, I love that. I'm so jealous. I wish I was still getting ID. Sadly not. Anyway, Rush, before we get into all the brilliant things that we're going to be discussing today, can you please start by telling our lovely listeners about yourself and your journey to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Roshani Hill. I'm like the founder of a company called Vital Woman Wellness, and I specialize in supporting women through hormonal transitions. Now, a lot of people are like, what on earth does that even mean? I particularly focus on like preconception health, postpartum, and perimenopause. And when you mentioned that I was 40, I actually went through my own situation of going through a lot of birth trauma and everything, which kickstarted me into early menopause, which I'm sure we can go into a lot of detail about. But the main thing is, I support women to really understand what is going on with their bodies. And previous to me being sort of functional health coach, so I'm actually a functional health coach, and a lot of people don't know what that word is, so we can debunk that. I was a health lobbyist, so I still do that, and I support the government's agenda in the UK around prevention is better than a cure. There was a lot of focus around workplace health and mental health, which was amazing, but one glaringly obvious missing aspect was women's health. And there is a women's health strategy, but very little is being done about it. So it's one of those things that's the reason I sort of created this whole business, because going on my own personal journey and having worked with the government and in the health space, I understood there was a huge gap.
So I'd love to start going into your own journey a little bit, because again, we were talking about this briefly off air. I just think women don't talk about this postpartum period and what happens to your hormones and your body in general after you have children. And I feel like since I had my first little boy nearly 5 years ago, I have been on such a journey of self-discovery, because everything has changed. I feel like I'm coming out the other side a totally different person to who I went in as.
100%. Like, honestly, it's the most shocking thing. I feel like I didn't really understand my friends, I felt, because I had kids later. I had kids at 36 and 38. And so a lot of my friends who had like a lot of older kids, and I just assumed they had totally normal births. They continued life. And then when I had my own children, they all started telling me their horror stories. I'm talking like absolute shocking stories, like being sewed up with like, those patches when you have like a vaginal tearing, all sorts of things. And I was like, are you joking? And you never told me this. And the thing is, it's because it's normalized to not talk about it. It's almost like, oh, I've got a healthy baby. That's good enough. Let's just get on with it now. And it doesn't have, I think the lack of conversation around that is a real issue. And that's why I'm like a queen of overshare. So you can ask me anything.
Me
I
too.
talk about,
Love an overshare.
yeah, yeah, I just feel like I mean, if I'm not going to be talking about it, then who the hell is? So I feel like it's really important to really share your own personal journey, and not just because you're just like offloading on anything, but you really need to be able to get it out and share what you've gone through, because it is traumatic, and sometimes you feel really isolated. But did you want to hear about my shopping
Yes, I
stories?
do. Tell me.
I don't know where to start. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to start with actually my first story was in COVID, and a lot of people I think experienced the situation I had. So I was really excited. I had a baby first. I was pregnant at 36, and I was considered a geriatric mum, as you are over 35, which is disgusting, right? Like now you're considered geriatric because you're over
I know.
35.
It's
Um,
ridiculous.
but yeah, so and I ended up having a pretty healthy pregnancy. Nothing like to sort of moan about. And then I went in. I remember like just for a midwife appointment, and she'd mentioned that I should, if I have any reduced movements, go into hospital. And I was like, well, yeah, I've actually had a bit of reduced movements, and obviously it was at this point 38 weeks, so the baby's getting bigger and probably moving less anyway. And then I went into hospital and the baby started kicking. So I thought I'd go in just to check if everything was okay. And I was like, actually, the
Yeah.
baby's kicking. I'm just going to go home. And the doctor was like, no, you're going to have an induction. And I was like, what? And I was like, but I'm not like, I'm totally fine. Like the baby's kicking. She's like, no, if you don't have an induction, you've got to sign this waiver that it's a negligent situation. You're putting your baby at risk. And I was like, are you joking? So actually, I wasn't even ready. I was like, I haven't even got my bag. I haven't got my, when you have this whole grandeur sort of view of
Yeah.
like having your playlist and your bag packed. I was like, are you joking? So I was forced into a situation where I was induced, had a really grueling 2 day sort of like situation in hospital. And the thing is, the reason I'm telling you this is that there was a 2024 Australian study done on the fact that women who were induced for low risk, typically first time pregnancies, had a significantly higher risk of emergency C-section. And lo and behold, I was 10 centimeters ready to push. And then all of a sudden, like it was like an ER episode, all the doctors start flying in, all the like machines started going off. I had got sepsis, my baby got sepsis. So they gave me an emergency C-section and cut me open while I was 10 centimeters ready to push. So imagine 2 days of laboring in this induction situation where I didn't even need to be induced. And I basically they damaged my cervix when they were open, like cut me open 10 centimeters open. But they didn't tell me this, by the way. So at that point, I had a lot of birth trauma. The story gets way worse. I don't know if I should go into that much detail, but they forgot about me in the recovery ward without any pain relief. So it was pretty bad. So then I remember coming out of that going, Jesus Christ, like, is this what everyone goes through? Because this is really insane. And my husband wasn't even meant to be there because it was COVID, but because they forgot about me, he was there because they didn't even notice that he was there. Anyway, luckily I worked in the healthcare industry. So I ended up saying, I'm going to call the Care Quality Commission because this is unacceptable. Like, how can you forget about someone? Like the cleaner found me. And then, it's just shocking. So the thing is, the story kind of kickstarted me into going on, what on earth is going on with mums and postpartum, because this is unacceptable. Again, I had a healthy baby. Lucky I was super happy that she made it okay. She almost didn't. And then I kind of went back into the workplace, and actually that situation, I was so mentally traumatized. And you get that 6-week check of are you okay mentally?
Yeah.
In the UK. And they don't ask you any questions. It's are you okay? Yeah, great. And so you don't really go have any comprehensive postpartum support. You're kind of forced to get on with it. So that kind of started my whole journey of this is really, really shocking, and women need to know more about what's going on with their bodies. Because had I known more about the situation, I wouldn't have let that situation of the induction happen, right? And there's a lot of data to support that. This study is really evident. And when I actually posted it about on Instagram, it went viral because so many women were like, oh my God, that happened to me too. I got induced even though I didn't want to, and I wasn't ready. So anyway, that was the start of my journey. Then I ended up getting pregnant the second time, and I was really lucky. It was a year later. It was kind of unexpected. And because I told you about this, they obviously cut me open and fully dilated. They never told me about any risks associated with that. I just thought, oh, okay, it's fine, it's normal. But luckily, because I worked in the health space, I'm a health lobbyist by background, I really care about research and policy. And I was at Chelsea Hospital this time, so I changed hospitals. And they have an amazing research wing. And so basically the lady there was like, oh, your situation being cut open 10 centimeters dilated, you're higher risk of preterm labor. And I was like, what, really? So she's like, can you opt into this research program? Of course. And the one thing I want to say to anyone who's listening to this podcast, if you're ever asked to do anything research oriented around women's health, please say yes, because the reason why women's health is so misunderstood is because there's really, really little research, less than 2.5%. of research goes to women's reproductive health. Okay, so anything I opted into, I said yes. Thank God, because if I didn't, my baby wouldn't be here today, my second one. So then 20 weeks, they gave me a transvaginal scan, which actually they normally don't give you that in that period of time. They found out my cervix was opening, and I basically had to have a stitch put in. I was on bed rest for 5 months. If you actually really know me really well, I'm a super active, can't sit still. Pretty sure I probably have undiagnosed ADHD. But I'm one of those people that cannot sit still. And I was in a wheelchair for 5 months, couldn't get out. You can't stand because the pressure of the baby can open your cervix. So this situation, and at work, I worked in the health space. I had a female boss, and she was absolutely disgusting. She basically was trying to force me to work while I was going through all of this trauma, not knowing if my baby was going to make it. And it was then that I retrained as a functional health coach. I thought, if I'm going to be going through this, I need to understand what is going on with my body.
Yeah.
And that is why I like here, because I was like, what is happening? I work in the health space. I have no idea what's happening to my body. It got diagnosed. So basically it was called incompetent cervix. I mean, the name in itself, do you hear
Yeah,
incompetent dick?
it's insulting. Like, stop it.
It's
It's
like,
only
yeah,
incompetent
incompetent
because you
cervix.
basically didn't do your job properly and sliced me open. It. Oh my God, awful.
Yeah, it's awful. And then basically that whole situation, I was like, what the hell? And then it kind of just gave me a whole new like meaning to turning pain into power because, you know, mentally I was not okay. I was like so traumatized by everything. Luckily, I have two healthy babies, but you know what? Like I've talked to so many people who had my situation and didn't have the same outcome, and it's really
Yeah,
awful.
yeah,
And I just was super
heartbreaking.
lucky that I had this lady that was amazing that made me like do these extra scans. So the thing is, when I came out of that, I trained as a functional coach, and I was like, women need more answers. We need to understand what is going on with our hormones. We need to understand what is going on with our bodies. We really need to understand our bodies in a different way because, unfortunately, with conventional medicine, it wasn't until 1993 that women were even included in clinical trials. So all of the things you see that doctors get trained in is around being like understood around men, and that's just been transposed to women. So a lot of the times, unless you're working with a gynecologist who's amazing, doctors are generalists. You have to take kind of power and ownership of your own health. Otherwise, you just might be in the dark and really suffering in silence. So that's kind of like my backstory.
So interesting. And I mean, look, I I'm very interested in functional medicine in general, and over the years I found it very interesting how the tests that functional medicine doctors do versus your general GP are so much more in depth and so much broader. They're testing for so many more markers, and also the scales are different. Like I've recently, just for comparison, had two sets of tests done. I got one set of tests done at a hospital, and then I got another set of tests done with a functional medicine expert. And the doctor's GP results came back saying it was all fine, everything was okay. And the markers that came back from the functional medicine doctor were like, no, you've got so much out of whack here. And I was like, why is the connection? Like it's such a large window of like there's what's the word? There's such a gap, such a big gap of of like error essentially. Like why is that? Why is there such a big gap between functional medicine and GP medicine, for example?
So they look at data in a different way. So it's not, I always think you shouldn't really attack the doctors themselves because it's not really their fault,
No,
right? It's
no,
their,
no,
no, it's
but
not you.
why
Yeah,
is
I know.
the protocol's
You're
so
different.
different?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just saying in general, like when I talk about it, people are like, oh, you shouldn't. I'm like, it's not attacking the doctor. I mean, it's this system.
No.
The conventional system is there for a purpose. It's an amazing for crisis management. It's based on symptom
Yes.
management, and it's there for disease management. Like, if you've got to think about it in a contextual way, you have an average of 9.4 minutes with a GP. Do you really think that GP is going to understand you as a person? No, they only have time to understand your symptoms. And you can't really understand a symptom or understand what's going on until you understand a person. Like literally you cannot, because it's the
Mm.
context and what got you to where you are is super important. So functional health, it really deals with up-to-date scientific evidence, and it's not looking at symptoms. It's looking at what's the driving the outcome. So you don't just wake up one day and have a whole plethora of gut issues, or you'll have a whole plethora of like hormonal
No.
imbalance. It's usually a downstream impact of everything else that's going on, and doctors don't look at that. But the thing is, the functional medicine complements conventional medicine in the sense that conventional medicine is like when you have that accident and you have that crisis, it's there to save you. But if you are really wanting to live in optimal health, that's where functional health steps in, because unfortunately, if you ignore your signs and symptoms, you're going to get to the chronic stage. And the thing is, sorry, is that my dog? But the point is, at the end of the day, so the way that conventional ranges work, it's based on the average 95% of the population, over which 60% has a chronic disease. So you're being compared to a sick population. Whereas in functional health, the ranges are based on optimal, ranges based on up-to-date scientific evidence of what it should look like. So you'll
Yeah.
see things like, for example, you could be like 6 to 20, and 20 is bad, and you could be 19 and the doctor's like, you're fine. But you're like
Yeah.
so close to the 20. Whereas in functional health, you're either like high or low, and you just need to understand the patterns. And it's never one
Yes.
marker alone, right? So you go to the doctor, they'll test like, B active B12, but actually, someone could have a functional B12 deficiency, have B12 in their body, but not able to utilize it. So like that's not
Mm,
telling you anything. So there's just so
no.
many different things that aren't picked up.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I want to talk about hormones a lot because I've got a lot to say on this topic. But it's really interesting what you say here about cholesterol. I've recently been told I've got high cholesterol. I've got apparently, again, no one's really explained this to me, so I don't really understand. But there are two types of cholesterol. One is more linked to genetics, and one is more linked to diet. And apparently, both of mine were sky high, and no one could really explain to me is it bad high, is it like marginally bad high, and I was like, okay, great, well, what do I do now? And they were like, well, you just take the statins. I was like,
Oh my
okay,
God.
can I do anything else? And they were like, no, we really need to just we need to get it under control, take the statins, let's get it under control and then see. And I've since done a bit more research and realized that statins aren't actually that good for you. um so for someone who's like me, firstly, can you help me understand why statins aren't that good, and what else can we do, instead of going straight to the medication? Because I feel like, look, don't get me wrong, I'm a massive fan of medication, and I feel like medication does help in lots of ways. But I feel like we are getting into this age where medication is just thrown out willy-nilly. I went to the doctor the other day, and I had like my sinuses were sore, and they were like, here, have some antibiotics. I was like, oh, really? Are we doing that?
Well, the thing is, like, I've been on my own personal journey of taking far too much conventional medicine, and it's actually affected my body quite a lot. And now, thank God, I've gone on a more natural healing journey. Look, there is totally a role for medicine, right?
Yeah,
But
agreed.
again, have you tried that? Particularly if you're young and you have the ability to do things more naturally, or you have the resources to do things more naturally, try the natural approach first. And if that doesn't work and you still need some medical intervention, or there's another more chronic state, you're at the chronic stage, then fine. But with cholesterol, oh my God, so I've got something called familial hypercholesterolemia, so I know a lot about cholesterol. It's very common in Asians actually, the genetic component where you are more predisposed to high cholesterol, right? And the thing is, my dad had been taking statins for like most of his life. I cannot explain the chronic back issues he has. I did his blood work. It was actually like shocking. And I was like, mate, you need to sort your metabolic health out. The thing is, cholesterol isn't something you should look at alone. It's actually very interlinked with hormones. So estrogen
Right.
is really interlinked with cholesterol, okay? Cholesterol metabolism and estrogen are really interconnected. So as women age, our hormones will fluctuate. Estrogen fluctuates, and this is why you'll see HDL start to decline, LDL, which is like you could say the bad cholesterol, start to increase. Cholesterol starts to increase as
Sorry,
we
I'm sorry,
age.
Rush. My husband's
Okay.
just coming with the baby. What's wrong? What you've given him medication this morning, so only you can answer that. What have you given him? No, I didn't. Okay, all right. Sorry, my baby's not very well.
That's all right. Oh
Sorry,
no.
continue. Okay, yeah, he's got a fever. I think he's teething. Nightmare. Anyway.
Oh, I'm so okay. That's awful.
Sorry,
I
as
feel
you were
honestly do.
saying.
No, I was like, so basically, yeah, cholesterol is like super interlinked. Like, so, with the one thing I want to say with functional health is like hormones aren't the first place to start. Okay. They're usually impacted by everything else that's going on. Yes, when you head towards perimenopause, how old are you now?
35.
Okay, so you're at the stage now where your hormones are going to start shifting towards perimenopause. It can start as early as 35. But what happens is people always assume that estrogen and progesterone both just decline straight away. It's not. Progesterone starts to usually go to decline first. Progesterone is an immune modulating hormone. Estrogen starts to go like this, like a roller coaster. And this is why, like cholesterol, if it's elevated, by the way, it could be elevated from a conventional perspective, and then functionally it could be fine. It's the one marker you see in functional that's higher than conventional. Okay, because cholesterol is actually an antioxidant. So people who've got low cholesterol, that is not a good thing. Okay, so I often see low cholesterol in people who don't eat well, who don't have enough good fats in their diet. It's really about if you have too much like of the good versus bad, If you have the opposite, if you have too much of the bad versus good, then it's like, okay, you need to have better, more, reduce processed foods, have better high fats like fatty fish and avocado and everything else. But the main thing is like the total cholesterol level is actually higher. So a lot of people come to me thinking they've got high cholesterol and they're actually within the functional range. So I actually did my own cholesterol and mine was elevated recently, but that is because I'm going through early menopause and my estrogen is totally tanked, okay? So that's one of the things that comes out from this premature ovarian insufficiency, this thing that I got from the child's birth situation I got. It basically cause an autoimmune attack on my ovarian function. But the point is, it's super interlinked with hormones. I had no other signs of metabolic issues. It's also interlinked with liver, it's also linked with thyroid. If you have a subclinical low thyroid hormone, which can often happen postpartum, what's going to be impacted? Cholesterol. So, when you look at like cholesterol, you've got to see what's going on everywhere else. You can't look at it alone.
Wow. Wow. Okay, interesting. And then tell me about statins. Why should we not be taking the statins?
Okay, so everyone needs to go to www.drugs.com and enter the actual drugs that they've been prescribed by a doctor, and it'll show you exactly what it depletes. Okay, it depletes The thing is, if you want to take statins, go ahead. But if you might get fibromyalgia. It depletes CoQ10, which is super important for mood, nervous system support. It depletes magnesium. It's really, if you're going to take these drugs, you have to take something alongside it. I've got a client who takes statins, and she didn't want to stop it because her sister was her doctor. Okay, so that's even crazier. So she's like, I can't not take it. I feel like I should be listening to my sister. But I made sure she took CoQ10 as a supplement. I made sure she had the good fats and everything else that she was depleted from. But the point is, she was like so thin because she's basically cutting out all the good fats in her diet because of cholesterol. But she doesn't understand that she's got familial hypercholesteremia, so it's totally a different ball game for her. So the one thing with genetics, it loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So yes, some part of it is lifestyle orientated, but it doesn't mean that it's purely focused on, like diet or whatever. So with your situation, like, I don't know how high your cholesterol was, but statins is like the last resort. That's even like, honestly, after years of taking it, my dad stopped because he said it honestly gave him the worst chronic back problems. And he said it honestly, like at one point, he couldn't even move his legs because they were so stiff. Like he got really chronic side effects from it. And as soon as he stopped, it all stopped. So it's one of those things where like statins is like linked to really poor outcomes, health outcomes. So I think it's the one thing you always have to understand with health is that if you're going to take something, understand what it depletes and replace those. Like people who take Monjaro, my God, like they basically look malnourished when you look at their blood work. Take some prenatal vitamins or because prenatals always have everything in it. Take some multivitamins. You have to do something to counteract whatever you're taking.
Wow. Okay, God. I feel like I need to redo a list of all the many things I'm taking at the moment because I've been on a whole journey of like anxiety, ADHD diagnosis, high cholesterol. I feel like a pill popping mess at the moment. And I mean, it got to a point where I was literally like, I want to feel sane and normal and level. So I was like, give me all the drugs. And then the plan was to then go through all this additional testing to try and then get to a point um, where I could get off all the medication and try and sort everything out from a lifestyle point of view. But I feel like it's all stemmed. I mean, I've got terrible gut issues. And I feel like my gut is not functioning possibly in the right way, and hormones as well. I mean, my hormones are totally out of whack. My cortisol levels are extremely high, and lots of this is down to what's happened postpartum. Can you just explain a little bit about what happens, maybe, pre-pregnancy, into pregnancy, and then postpartum from a hormone level and like our bodies in general?
Well, I think the main thing is it's not like a one size fits all. Okay. So the
For
one that I
sure.
actually am part of like a preconception study in the UK, it's called the Poppy study. And the reason why it's amazing, because it's the first preconception study of its kind, is that it's looking at what could happen to women before they get pregnant and whether it has an impact during pregnancy and postpartum. And it's already
Okay.
coming out with some interesting results. And it's particularly focusing on gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. Like you don't just wake up one day and get this. It's not I've randomly just got this. It's usually linked to some preconception health issues that have gone exacerbated during pregnancy. And the sad thing is these things don't disappear. They usually include higher risks later on of diabetes or higher risk of heart disease and everything else. So it's like, there's often people, we just go into a society of having kids without even thinking about preconception, which is really silly. It's really important. Preconception health. And I know that now as a fact, it really impacted me, I think, as well. So the point is, with your hormones, again, it's always a downstream impact of everything else. And one of the main things, particularly from a preconception standpoint, is just because you're having a period doesn't mean you're ovulating. Okay? One of the things I see all the time, and I've got a friend who literally came to me and was like, I have done 2 rounds of failed IVF. And she's like, I don't have plenty of follicles. I don't know what's going on. I looked at her bloods from a functional health lens, but she has one of the most expensive fertility doctors. I looked at her bloods and she had like this PCOS presentation where basically one of the classic signs of PCOS, and there's different drivers for PCOS, but pretty much 70% of women who've got PCOS have some sort of insulin resistance issues. When you have insulin resistance, you have something called excess androgens. And what happens, it means that you typically have anovulatory cycles. Okay, so it means that you just because you're having it. So she's been sitting there having IVF treatment, trying to really like get pregnant, and she's not even ovulating. Okay, the doctor didn't even tell her that she's not ovulating. So she's now reversed this insulin resistance by focusing on all the metabolic stuff that she needs to focus on, which is the health handbrake for her. And now, lo and behold, she's ovulating. She's tracking the cycle. She's tracking the cervical mucus. She's tracking her basal body temperature. And the fertility doctor's like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. Like, are you joking? Like, why didn't you look at it? And I can't diagnose. As a functional health coach, I'm not able to diagnose because I can say, like, you've got PCOS-like presentation, but pretty much she had the classic signs of PCOS, okay? And no one's ever told her that. And that is a huge fertility handbrake. And if you reverse the thing that's driving it, which in her case is insulin focused, then you'll get the outcome hormonally. And now all of a sudden her progesterone is spiking when she's testing afterwards, after ovulation, because progesterone will spike after ovulation. If you don't ovulate, your progesterone won't be spiking, and that's how you can test to see whether you are ovulating or not.
Interesting.
So
wow.
Yeah. So that's just one part. But postpartum is another kettle of fish, okay? So already during pregnancy, your body's naturally more elevated. Your progesterone, your estrogen, everything is elevated, right? And it's meant to be for pregnancy. And then all of a sudden when you deliver, it drastically tanks. And this is why women are really like, or also in the mood, because, progesterone is an immune modulating hormone. That's why people always struggle with like metabolic issues, hormonal issues, emotional issues, because there's all these hormonal shifts. Prolactin starts to increase because of the breast milk. Cortisol and thyroid hormones are all over the place. So, there's all these roller coasters going on. And honestly, I remember the baby blues when like the milk came in and I just couldn't stop crying. I was like, what's wrong with me? I literally was like talking and it was just like coming out floods of tears. And it's all got to do with the hormonal shifts that you're going through. Is that prolactin increase is huge. So then you're going through all these shifts and that insulin sensitive like hormone, right? It's like all of a sudden it's crashing. So this is what happens postpartum, and people always think postpartum is like 3 weeks, 3 months. It's not. It can take up to a year minimum for women's bodies to recalibrate metabolically, nutritionally. Like women are already depleted because babies are taking so much out of us. So all of a sudden you're like wondering why you feel like shit. Well, it's because you probably haven't focused on your sleep. You're breastfeeding, you probably don't have the tribes and communities that your parents and generations before had. Like I gave birth in the UK. My parents live in Sydney. My husband's parents live in Newcastle. We didn't have any like family around us. And I had all that trauma I was going through and I was just doing it on my own with my husband. And like, you just think about all the stuff you go through. It plays havoc on your hormones. And, I said with hormones, the one thing I want everyone to take away from this conversation is that it is not the first place to start. It is literally where it's a health scorecard. Like your period is like a health monthly scorecard. If you're not, you might be having a period, but it might not be a healthy cycle. It might not be ovulating. You might be having heavy ones. It's just like the downstream impact of everything else. So the challenge with postpartum is a lot of women are so focused on getting their bodies back that they don't eat enough. They're nutritionally like depleted. They're wondering why they can't sleep properly. And then they're really stressed. So everything else gets turned off because when your body's in fight or flight, what's the first thing it's going to think of? It's like actually a primal kind of aspect of our kind of being is that when you're in fight or flight, you turn off your ovarian function.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to really listen to your body and actually really be really careful about what you put in your body and what you do with your body postpartum because, you might be ready to bounce back, but, your hormones aren't going to be happy for it.
No. And I have definitely learned that the hard way. I want to circle back to progesterone because I know progesterone can, I mean, I've had low progesterone. Weirdly, after my first baby was totally fine, but since then, I've really struggled. I found it easy to get pregnant, but then struggled to stay pregnant. It's like the lack of progesterone means that the egg essentially doesn't attach to my uterus, like that, and then I have a very early miscarriage. So the times that I've been pregnant and then miscarried, it's been like within the same day almost. Like I find out I'm pregnant and then like that day, 2 days later, I'm having an early miscarriage.
Oh,
And they put
same.
me on progesterone pills early. But I didn't even have a clue that this was a thing. Had I known, maybe I would have had my bloods taken before and tried to figure out why my progesterone was so low. But is it like progesterone, like why do we need good levels of progesterone? Like why does everything need to be in sync for these things not to happen?
Well, progesterone is what causes, like, what creates your baby, right? If you need ovulation, like your progesterone increases and then creates something called the corpus luteum, which is actually what creates the baby and feeds the baby, right? Eventually. So your progesterone is super important. Also, as we age, it is so important. It's like an immune modulating hormone. But progesterone is naturally low, remember, until you ovulate. So if you're not ovulating, progesterone isn't going to increase. So yeah, it is meant to be like you naturally produce progesterone through your body, but you're not going to get a spike unless you actually are having a healthy cycle. So for the moment, I'm having ovulatory cycles because I'm going through this early menopause thing, and I have spontaneous ovulation, but I have to take bioidentical progesterone, and it is the most important hormone because I have the most amazing sleep now, and it is so interlinked with everything else. But the early miscarriages that you were mentioning, that's actually something completely different. Like it's the fact that you're actually getting pregnant is good, but obviously like
Mm.
that, I had the same challenge. I had to take progesterone up my butt while I was in that second pregnancy because I am naturally like my progesterones were naturally declining because of this early menopause diagnosis, which I didn't even know I had. But the thing is, so you could have something underlying you probably don't know about yet.
So how do we then go around figuring all this out, figuring out the web, finding out the root cause of the hormone imbalance and everything else?
Well, the thing is, with root causes, you have to do like, I mean, your labs are a really good place to start. They're one good place because, they give you some data on your biochemistry and everything else, but you need to understand like a top-down approach. If you don't wake up one day with loads of issues, it's in your environment. You've got to understand like what is going on. Like a lot of clients come to me and they've got like menstrual flooding, they've got like periods for 3 weeks, and like they've got all these issues, and I'm like, what is going on? And it's all interlinked. A lot of them are vegetarian, they're all chronically anemic. Like it's so interesting how nutrients play a key role on everything
Yeah.
and how your body functions. So, people are like, oh, who cares about like being low in vitamin D? What does your thyroid need? Vitamin D. Well, how is thyroid health? So it's interconnected to cholesterol. So you see, like everything's like a pattern, all is interconnected. So the thing with hormonal health, I think I personally, I would get your blood work done. Like everyone's obsessed with doing the Dutch test. The Dutch test isn't going to tell you, it tells you how to metabolize, how your hormones are metabolized and adrenals work, but it doesn't tell you from a top-down approach what is impacting your hormones. So when I do a blood test, my hormones, like, I told you I figured out what was going on with my body for early menopause. When I was
Yeah.
doing my test, my follicle stimulating hormone was over 40 international units per liter. Okay. And most people's are around like 7, 5, 10, like it's like around when I was testing, the period that I was testing. And I was like, whoa, why is mine so high? And that is a sign that my ovarian function was struggling. Okay, so then you can't diagnose perimenopause from a test, but you can see that something's going on with your ovarian function if your follicle stimulating hormones are high. Then I did another test within a month, and it was 2 high tests, and I had a pelvic scan, and I identified I had this thing called premature ovarian insufficiency. It just meant my ovaries were smaller. Does it mean that I can't get pregnant? No, I still have follicles, but I don't have as many as someone my age should have. So the thing is, the other thing I say is get a pelvic scan, because sometimes women don't realize they've got fibroids or they've got, endo or
Mm.
adenomyosis. Like, it could be something like that. But the point is, you have to, like, I knew something was wrong. So doing labs wasn't the first place. I knew I was having hot flushes. I was having these weird, like, brain fog moments. And my husband was like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you so, like, in bed all the time when I used to be such a go-getter? And I said to the doctor before I was even doing my own blood, something's off. I think I've got menopause. And he's like, don't be ridiculous. You're not young. And he didn't even want to get the test for me. He thought I was making it up. So the point is, like, you start by understanding and listening to your body. Like, it shows you through its signs and symptoms. And you said, like, already, right? You've got some really off symptoms. You've got anxiety. You feel like something's off. Well, your blood test showed that, right? And then your doctors told you were fine.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's
So
wild. It's
you knew
wild.
it. You knew it. You didn't, like,
Yeah.
you know, your body's not lying to you. Like, it doesn't have a voice, so it tells you through its signs and symptoms.
So for someone, let's say someone is looking to get pregnant, they want to grow their family or start their family. Do you think it's better to have all the blood work done at the beginning of the journey, or do if they're not struggling to get pregnant, for example, but they get to postpartum and they're like, gosh, I feel totally out of whack and all over the place, like when is a good place to do, when is a good time to do the testing? And is there anything, like, let's say you're just feeling extremely anxious and overtired, is there something above and beyond just the testing that women can do to make themselves feel slightly more relaxed, and less anxious during this postpartum period?
So okay, so a couple of things. I think the first thing, you say the testing was the main thing, right? When is the
Yes.
testing? So I think the main thing with testing is that there's no right or wrong time. And I'm a big advocate of, like, there's no one size fits all, right? I personally test every 6 months to understand what's going on with my body, because I know that I'm aging and I want to be in optimal health. Some people don't care about that. They don't want to be in optimal health. They just want to lose weight or whatever it is, and they don't need to get tested. But preconception, the reason I'm on part of this poppy study is that if you are someone who wants to have children later in life, and I was one of those people, and you're over 30, I really recommend testing before you do have children, because you just don't know what impact that is having on your pregnancy, whether that's going to cause you to have a miscarriage, whether it's going to cause you to have complications, or whether it's going to make complications worse later on postpartum. Because trust me, it is way harder to, like, kind of get those nutrients postpartum, because you're already
Mm,
struggling, than it is to do
yes.
that in preconception stage. So why would you delay the inevitable? So I always think, like, if you are going to try for a baby, why not get tested and see what's going on, right? Particularly if you're a mum over 30. But I think also it's not just that. I think when it comes to sort of stress levels, like you mentioned, like, everyone's always obsessed with stress. Stress isn't the problem, right? It's like cortisol isn't a bad thing. It's actually, a natural response in our bodies, and it's there for a reason. But the problem is that people are in chronically high stress situations all the time, like systemically always there, right? You're just stuck in this fight or flight state. And that's when your digestion gets buggered. That's why your gut health gets buggered. Like, so many people have chronic constipation, that used to be me, or have, like, digestive issues, or you have, like, yeah, irregular periods or something going off. And that's all linked to this chronically stressed period, right? And the thing is, it's not like a one size thing. Like, it literally could be, some people could be chronically stressed just because they're, like, severely magnesium depleted. Like, magnesium is so important for the nervous system, for mood support, particularly as we age. If you're over 35, magnesium is the one that you have to have, like, regularly. It's one that every woman, because you just don't get enough through foods, through the soil and everything these days.
Mm,
So it's really important. But, like, it's not just that, it's just understanding with stress, like, it's your ability to recover, right? So it's like with
yeah.
exercise. You can only train as hard as you can recover. So the same thing comes with, like, with stress levels. It's not about the word stress, it's about how much can you recover? Like, people postpartum, some women, like, literally recover really quickly. They just don't get impacted by it all. Some people take a lot longer because they feel like they're undernourished when they went into pregnancy, or they don't have the community and they don't have the support, they don't have the sleep. I mean, there are so many variables to how someone can recover
Yeah.
postpartum. And, like, you can probably see, like, with your own like children, right? The way I recovered first time was so different to the way I recovered second time, when after I was in that wheelchair and everything, right? Like, it was just a completely different situation. So the tips I would say is, like, to really nourish your body, really understand what is going on, and I wouldn't wait until something bad happens. Like, if you are still 1 year out and you're feeling off, like, I actually did someone's bloods in Dubai recently, and she had a baby 18 months ago, and she's like, I'm really tired. I've gone back to work. She had blood. She looked like she was, like, living in, like, like a third world country, and, like, malnourished. I was like, do you eat? And she's like, oh, I don't really have time to eat in the mornings. I do have a healthy dinner. Sometimes I'll eat something snacks at lunch. I'm like, well, no wonder you're suffering from anxiety, because your body is incredibly undernourished. Like, how can you function with that little nutrient? Like, it's that sort of stuff. Like, under eating is more of a stress on the body than people think. Like, it's
Yeah.
so profound.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine. And I mean, just I wanted to talk about the guts because obviously you've said here that if you take supplement, like if something's out of whack and you can take supplements, um like that can help balance everything out. Now, I think one of my biggest issues, for example, and I know I'm not alone in this, is my gut is not absorbing everything properly. So look, I haven't had a full breakdown of my functional results yet, and I should do soon, but from a brief conversation that I had with the woman who took all my tests, she said that my body's not absorbing vitamins and minerals like it should be. All my levels are really low, and I'm a bit like, she's like, "Do you eat a lot of fast food or do you eat poorly?" I was like, "No, I mean, I pride myself on my well-balanced diet. I eat a lot of fiber, I eat a lot of protein, vegetables, not too much fruit, but like I'm quite a clean eating person." And she was like, "Yeah, something's going wrong in your gut because nothing seems to be absorbing." So again, like lots of these, we can be doing all the healthy eating and taking the supplements and doing everything else, but if our gut's not working properly, then we've got a big problem. So what kind of gut testing is there in the functional space? And again, what are the signs can we see that our gut might not be functioning properly?
Oh, so blood work can tell you so much about gut dysbiosis, but
I know,
also,
yeah.
so what you're
That is
talking
wild.
about, and people don't understand, like most of your immunity is held in your gut. I think it's like 70%
Mm,
or something like that. But basically, the test I always go on about is the bicarb soda test. It's not like a foolproof test. It's obviously you do this test alongside bloods, which also helps. But
yeah.
it's like you put half a teaspoon of bicarb soda in the water on an empty stomach, guzzle it down. If you don't burp, it's probably indicative that you've got low stomach acid, which means you need to have bile stimulating foods to support digestion and absorption. I never burp. Do you know I've got never been burping since I was probably like 18? That my stomach acid
Really?
is so low. Yeah, I just can't. So that means that now I've been like I literally throw rocket, chicory, radish, all the bitter foods stimulate bile. So always think bitter veg. Dandelion tea. What do you think I'm drinking now? I literally like it's great for liver detox. It's like bitter. I'm always drinking it. So basically, my stomach acid's improved massively. I used to be so bloated back in the day when I was like in my 20s. Now I'm like really not. Like the stomach's flat because I really work on my stomach acid. And it's really important. Like you can take a digestive enzyme sometimes, like betaine, HCl, and also like gentian bitters. But I think the main thing is that you need to like understand whether you are digesting. Otherwise, if you aren't, it's those supplements are expensive weight.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm also a celiac, so and I am the world's worst celiac. I feel like I really need to get that under control because I don't get terrible like if I eat a bit of gluten, I don't get terrible symptoms. So I'm a bit like, oh, but a little bit of dim sum. It's okay because I can't see the symptoms, but I know that inside it's
Ah.
probably really not doing me any favors. Yeah,
So celiac is an autoimmune disease.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so autoimmune issues are like, yeah, sometimes you can't see. Like with mine, I didn't know I had my situation with my ovarian intact, but you have to be really careful because it can kill you if you start eating gluten for you. You should really not eat gluten.
Oh my God. Okay. Well,
Um,
my immune system is also terrible, and I know, like deep down, that it's all linked, and I really just need to stop eating the gluten. But I'm like, oh, but dim sum's so tasty. I love dim sum.
I know it is really hard. I mean, actually, to be honest, I don't really eat much gluten either. I mean, I was told I was celiac like in Australia, and then I got retested and I don't. So I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I definitely have in blood. You can see signs of autoimmunity anyway, and
And
you
you?
can see it like, yeah, you can see it different markers and the different patterns. And like, to be honest, it's not like a death sentence or anything. It just means that you're always going to be in flaring remission. But for you, the fact that you don't have any symptoms is a good sign. It means that because you have
Yeah.
different stages and severities of it. Obviously, it's not as chronic, right? So you've obviously done
Yeah.
pretty well. But the problem is if
Yeah.
you are celiac, you probably it's really is doing something internally. So don't eat gluten.
I am definitely going to be sending you my test when I get these all out because I'd be so interested to see what you say. I want to
Yeah,
touch upon
definitely.
perimenopause before we start to round up today because I'm very aware I've been taking you talking. for a long time. So obviously you said you're kind of starting to go into perimenopause now, and I feel like lots of people who listen to this podcast are already in perimenopause or going into that phase of life. What are the signs and symptoms that we can look out for, and how can we support our bodies better through perimenopause?
So I honestly think like with perimenopause, my biggest thing is to like don't dismiss what's going on. Like there are four key stages. There's an amazing lady called Professor Pryor in Canada. She's like done a lot of research around like the stages of perimenopause, and she's amazing. So basically, the first early stage is that you could have regular cycles, but your symptoms are coming on, like classic ones like brain fog, anxiety, hot flushes, like really strange things. Like the first one of the worst weird symptoms I got was heart palpitations. I was like, oh my God, am I having like a heart attack? Something weird is going on. And I felt really
Wow.
strange. The other thing is it starts to really derail your immune function. I started to get like hives because it's something called mast cell activation, where all of a sudden it creates, so people start to get like really strange, like food intolerances, allergies, all of a sudden that you never had before, itchy skin, like really strange things. That could be usually the second stage. And that's because
Wow.
estrogen is starting to go like this. And the hot flush is usually the estrogen going high to low. So I told you it's like basically called like estrogen's last fireworks display. So it's like going up and down, and then the progesterone isn't there to balance it out. Before, when you were in your 20s and your early 30s, they're like plodding along, marrying it out. But now progesterone's going down and estrogen's doing this. And that is why you're starting to get these really strange symptoms. So some people, by the way, don't experience symptoms. It's like about 10% of women. And that is because usually what happens, it's not, again, like I said, it's not the hormones causing the problem. They're just triggering the underlying issues that were being kind of masked by the hormones. So that like histamine issue is 100% linked to gut health, right? And so when I started to go on a gut healing journey, it's all gone now. I don't get them anymore. So
Wow.
it's really interesting how important it is. It's because basically your gut is important for estrogen clearance. And if you've got gut dysbiosis or leaky gut issues, you're going to start to get all of these toxin issues and start to get like your body's going to start to respond with like itchiness or sinus issues or all sorts. But there's a really important aspect I think with women to understand is that a lot of women think that perimenopause can start in your 40s, 50s. It can start as early as 35, and you may not notice it. It could be subtle changes. But typically the second stage is like irregular cycles. Cycles could be slightly longer, slightly shorter. It could be a couple of days out and you're like, oh, that's normal. It could be that early stage. And then the third stage is usually like 60 days of like balance. That's where I'm at the later stages because of that diagnosis. So every 2 months I have a period now. And the fourth stage is that you're waiting. It's like called like the waiting room because your actual day of menopause is one day. It's 12 months from the last day of your period. That is the life cycle of menopause.
Wow. Interesting.
So
I
yeah,
feel
people
I
always,
feel like
yeah.
we probably need to do a whole podcast episode just on that because I mean I know nothing about menopause. It's like ignorance is bliss. But that's so interesting. So it's one day.
Yeah, it's one day. It's like literally like 12, everyone's waiting. And then you sometimes think people like, oh, I'm about to hit it. And then bang, a period comes and you've got to restart from that one day again.
Oh my God, how frustrating. What a very long waiting game that you've got to play. Great. Another great reason to be a woman, hey?
Oh, the thing is, it's actually called the second puberty. It's the same as like puberty. Do you remember how turbulent it was? And everyone went through it. And it's such a stigma and shame about it. And the reason I'm talking so much about it is like, I cannot explain how much people were like, like their reaction you should see on their face. I was going to do like a video channel about it. Like, what do you think of menopause? Like, it's like everyone's response is just so creeped out by the word menopause. And I'm like, what's so
Yeah.
bad about it? Like, would you freak
Yeah.
out if I told you you're going through puberty? It's the same thing, but you're just going through it at a different stage.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. So true. Rosh, I'm gonna start to wind this up now because I've been talking to you for nearly an hour. I'm very sorry I've kept you for a very long time. If you were to leave
All
us
right.
with one tip and one product today based on our conversation, what would they be?
Well, product-wise, I think magnesium is amazing, and you should definitely always keep magnesium in your thing. Magnesium glycinate is amazing, so that's the one that helps with your mood. If you ever suffer from constipation, magnesium citrate is for you. This is joke like magnesium citrate because it makes you go to the toilet. But glycine is the one that makes and supports your GABA and your mood system. So it's really important to have that before bed if you are suffering from like sleepless nights or anxiety. And I think also for a woman postpartum, please continue with your good quality prenatal because it is super important. Your nutrients aren't just going to come out of nowhere and start to support you. You have to at least do it for like 6 months, especially if you're breastfeeding. And Thorn
Okay.
and Seeking Health are two really good brands. You can get them on iHerb. They're really good ones and they're really comprehensive. But the main message I always want to say to women is that your hormones are like your monthly check, right? So do not think that your hormones are creating all the problems. It's everything else around you. So listen to your body. Don't ignore heavy periods aren't normal. Tired, being all tired all the time, bloating, all those things, they're not normal. So if you're ever concerned, get your labs done and get them analyzed from a functional perspective because it's really insightful.
And Rush, for anyone who wants to come find you and get their test done with you and have a chat, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram on Vital Woman Wellness. It's like Vital Woman is like one word and then wellness. And my email is rush@vitalwomanwellness.co.uk. And everyone always spells like woman as a woman, but it's woman,
I
ironically.
will link everything in the show notes so everyone can find you super easily. Thank you, Rush. You've been so wonderful, and I feel like I've learned a lot today, a lot. So thank you for your time, and I think we'll come back and we'll do another one on perimenopause for sure.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.